Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. I'm excited to have a special Friday afternoon edition, a special Behind Enemy Lines edition. We've got DMac Wake in the house. You can find him at DMac Wake 316. You can see that there in the banner on Twitter and X. And then do you have a YouTube channel or anything like that you want us to promote? Anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us over there at Kingdom Cast. That's with the K, Kingdom Cast as well. And we have the Tell Truth podcast every single Wednesday night. Me, CJ, and DG, we do that as well. So yeah, Kingdom Cast on YouTube, Twitter, obviously Facebook, anywhere you can find us.
All right, on. So you're the third Kingdom Cast member
Yeah.
that I've had on so far. So that's awesome. I'll be sure and add that to the description of the show. I don't have that in there right now, I don't think, unless I caught that somehow. But cool. I will get that added as soon as possible. But DMac, welcome to the show. Obviously, we got a big matchup to talk about, Super Bowl Sunday, Niners and Chiefs. And you're obviously a Chiefs fan. Where should we start? What would you like to talk about first today? I don't really have a strict format for my shows. A lot of times we'll talk to, let's say to the audience real quick too, before we get too far into it. Got Daniel Berry Sports Highlights in the house. Make sure you check out his channel. He says, yo, and another yo, yo. He's a Rams fan, but he's actually pretty cool. We got CarCast in the house. He has a Niners YouTube channel. Make sure you check his out. Give him a like and subscribe. So some more yos. He says, how's everybody doing today? I'd say better now that you're here at CarCast. But thanks for joining.
Appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I don't think that either team will run away with this game. We both have really good defenses. And, you guys obviously have the best quarterback in the game. We have the best weapons in the game. And to me, it sort of comes down to which of those two things, or which team can run the ball and the other one can't, right? You guys have Pacheco. He's outstanding. We have CMC. He is too. They're both great running backs for sure.
Well, one place I do like to start, because this is a Super Bowl, and this is a place in which stories get written and put into pen in the record books forever. To you, I'll say for our side, as far as the Chiefs are concerned, I think the legacies on the line are fascinating. I think the Brett Veach angle of this, the way that he's been able to remake this team as an executive is huge for what we want to have solidified as a dynastic run. Chris Jones, which could be, the end of his Chiefs career, to finish it out with a championship would be massive. Obviously, we know what Mahomes and Kelsey are chasing historically. But, from your side, what do you think are some of the major legacies that are aligned? Obviously started with Kyle Shanahan, but Brock Purdy, maybe a little bit of George Kittle in there, Nick Bosa. What do you think are some of the major legacy storylines for the 49ers in this game?
Well, I would go with Trent Williams also, since this is his first ever Super Bowl in his 13th season. It's a big one for him for sure. Kyle as well. He's got that reputation of being the offensive genius, but who just can't win the big one. Something that I know Andy Reid could kind of relate to. Over the summer, I said basically Andy Reid was Kyle until Kyle passed on Mahomes. And so, there's some parallels there for sure. I just hope that Kyle gets it done here in San Francisco and doesn't have to leave to go to a second team the way Andy Reid did. Obviously, Andy Reid lost a bunch of NFC Championship games in a Super Bowl with the Eagles, and then left and then got it done with the Chiefs. Brock Purdy, it's a big one. It's funny to say that in just your first full season and second season overall as Mr. Irrelevant. But with quarterbacks, there's this weird thing in the Super Bowl where if you go to your first Super Bowl and you don't win it, you don't even ever go back, let alone win it. So, now, and that's only true until it's not. And Brock Purdy has proved a lot of those things that, used to be very true. And, now they're not. So I'm not saying there's no chance he could ever do it, but it's not a good sign for sure. Yeah, and then there's all the guys who have already been there, who were there last time our two teams met in Super Bowl 54 in Miami. Obviously, you mentioned Kittle, who famously said we'll be back with a vengeance. Bosa, Fred, Dre, Debo, Juice Check. And then that's pretty much it. I think maybe Wisnowski as well. And I can't think of anybody else. Like, and then for the Chiefs, there's not a ton of guys back, right? I mean, it's like Andy, Mahomes, Kelsey, and Chris Jones. I think isn't there an offensive lineman Yang or something like that who was like, he didn't play, but he was there.
Yeah,
he was on the team. He's still on the roster. I guess I mostly count the guys that played, right? Actually played.
Absolutely.
Just like why I don't count Jimmy G's 2 Super Bowl wins. He kneeled down in them, but that doesn't count for me. So yeah. A lot of legacy stuff on. Another one would be Mooney Ward, since he was a Chief, and you guys decided you didn't want to pay him, and we did, and so he's interesting. He said something this week about like everything's better on the Niners. I'm like, yeah, but we don't have a ring. So, and you got your ring with the Chiefs. So I think players a lot of times say things about the teams that paid them, that maybe aren't 100% true, or bad things about teams that didn't pay them that maybe aren't 100% true. You see it with some players that have left the 49ers. I think Jet McKinnon said about a lot of bad things leaving the 49ers. And we did pay him. That's the funny thing, was we paid him a boatload of money and he was injured most of the time. And then when he did play, he was never like what he's played like for you guys. But that's a lot. I don't know. I'm sure there's more that I'm missing, but those are some of the big ones.
Well, I think you did mention there are a little bit of parallels between the coach and quarterback. I certainly agree. I mean, Andy Reid and the narrative that surrounded him around Philadelphia was obviously him being an offensive genius. And then there was the aspect of, he can't really win the big game. That followed him for a long time. And obviously wore out his welcome out there in Philadelphia, and fortunately was able to come here to KC. And he was not allowed to leave. Clark Hunt made sure of that, that he was going to be the Kansas City Chiefs head coach. And it's been fortunate the run that we've been on since then, that he finally got, a quarterback, I think, worthy of his offensive mind to match. And Brock Purdy, you talk about, first, full year starting, making the Super Bowl in this aspect. Mahomes make it to the AFC Championship game in his first full year starting, and his second year full year starting, actually been able to win it. So it's a little bit of parallels there for some guys that had been there before, but still had similar narratives to the guys on your side that haven't necessarily been in this position here today. But, we could certainly talk about it. I think that the good place to start certainly is on the defensive side of the ball with both of these teams, because a lot of them mirror each other. I mean, both these teams, have a better pass defense than they do a better run defense. Both these teams can be susceptible to the run. I will say that the one thing about each of these defenses is that the secondary pass rushers are going to be a massive storyline in this game, in my personal opinion. Us not having Charles Omenihu is going to hurt us in trying to get after Brock Purdy, specifically because there are some weaknesses along your offensive line outside of Trent Williams. On your side, obviously, you guys traded for Trace Young in the middle of the season. You have Eric Armstead. You signed Javon Hargrave. You want those guys to try and show up in these moments a little bit more than they necessarily have maybe throughout the playoffs or the second half of the season. And so I think the secondary pass rushers are going to be a massive storyline in this game, because we know Nick Bosa and Chris Jones are going to get the massive part of the offensive line's protection schemes specific attention to make sure those guys don't write the game. So I think we can start there as far as the defense is concerned. And certainly, Charvarius Ward is a major secondary piece for you guys as well on that side. How do you feel about your defense coming into this?
Before the Packers game and before the Lions game, I was saying overpaid and overrated, specifically the D line, because Hargrave's making $19 million. He hasn't played up to that, at least not the second half of the season. He had a good start to the season, and he kind of faded a little bit. Eric Armstead's been injured, and I don't know that he's 100% even, or if he's 100% physically. I don't know that he's 100% conditioning wise, game shape, if you will. Chase Young is super overrated. from being that sort of like Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Chase Young at Ohio State.
Ohio State, yep.
People just thought they were going to keep cranking out these, premier edges, and it really turns out that Nick is the only elite one of them. I mean, Joey kind of is, but he's injured so much. I don't think Joey. He maybe Nick was. I don't think he is anymore. And then Chase Young kind of is like the has been that never was. He just, I mean, the ACL hurt him for sure. But I don't even know, even if he didn't have the ACL, I don't think he would ever be Nick, or maybe even never be Joey. So and now there's, effort and motor concerns with him. People are calling him Jog Young instead of Chase. And, I've
heard that one before.
he had a couple good tackles, 2 or 3 against the Lions. And he did make a nice play against the Packers where he stopped, the love shove, I guess they're calling, instead of the brotherly shove, they call it the love shove in Green Bay. But and so Chase Young's been underwhelming, and especially he doesn't have a lot of moves. He his only move is to go after the quarterback, and a lot of times that's at the expense of edge containing against running backs. So I'm concerned about containing Pacheco, because we had trouble containing the Lions running backs, who are outstanding. Kind of add them together, you've got CMC basically. So they're elite for sure, or at least their line is. And, I always said Aaron Jones was kind of right there in that conversation with CMC, maybe one slight tier lower. But, Aaron Jones did, big stuff against us too. So I have no doubts Pacheco will have a pretty good game. I think, maybe Randy Gregory might be the answer to start and bring in Chase Young on passing downs, more like in the nickel package. But also you mentioned edge players that are missing. And I'll say Clelin Ferrell, and people will say, well, he was a bust for the Raiders. And he's really not an impact pass rusher the way Charles Omenihu is. We really, missed him this year and are missing him now, just like you guys are. But he is really good at setting the edge, Clelin Ferrell. And so that's where he's been missed in the last couple of games. And then, there's other guys we miss, but they're like from last season. So we miss Azeez Al-Shire, or Burks
as well.
What's that?
I think because Ebicom for you guys
was a great run stuffing edge. And then also Jimmy Ward was an enforcer, and all over the field. But, he was great at run fit. He was also great at covering, slot receivers. Tight ends, and especially the bigger slot receivers. Yeah. So, we're missing all those guys. Our defense, tackling used to be a real thing for the 49ers. We barely had any missed tackle, or some of the least in the league. And now, I don't know if to say we're the worst, but we're definitely, I don't think we're in the top half for tackling anymore. So there are some definite concerns on the defense, especially individually. It'd be like Ambry Thomas is a concern. He, got torched about 3 different times, whether it was penalties or catches against the Packers. And then against the Lions, he twisted his ankle a little bit. So I don't really know if he's 100%. He's been limited. Like I said, Oren Burks filling in for Azeez Al-Shire. He's a great special teamer, but as a strong Sam linebacker, he's fine, but he's no Azeez Al-Shire, who kind of took over a starting role for Tennessee. And then Jair Brown, the rookie, filling in for Hufanga. He came in and played really admirably at first. Then he started kind of making these rookie mistakes. He can take bad angles. He's a lot like Hufanga from a combine perspective. They're kind of like combine clones. They're both like not real fast, but they play fast due to anticipation, instincts. They are both ball hawks. They're both big hitters. They're both great blitzers. They both can kind of get burned because they're ball hawks, and also a lot of times big hitters. You hit somebody and they bounce off and keep going. So all those things are kind of true. But Jair has the additional thing of taking some bad angles before he makes the hit, or so that he doesn't make a hit. And so that sort of showed up before he had a little injury. Now he's back. So, those are kind of my concerns on defense, mostly Ambry and Jair Brown. Oren Burks is just like, he's not quite as good, but he's not, I wouldn't say a huge liability.
Yeah. And I mean, like the reality of the situation is the ways in which our offense have kind of, I'll say, distilled the way in which we distribute the ball, featuring Pacheco in the run game, obviously Rasheed Rice and Travis Kelsey in the passing game. I think that there are going to be times in which we're able to kind of get after that defense. Specifically, you talk about the ability to stop the run, which you guys have had some mixed bag as far as that is concerned. Obviously, to the edge, I think there's a lot of pin pulls and toss plays that we've kind of implemented, some counter runs to take advantage of kind of the aggressiveness as far as your edges are concerned, that we've been, getting after as far as the playoffs are concerned, really. That we'll try and feature. And I think that it'll come to a certain point in this game in which the defense for Wilkes will say, okay, there's only so much of a passive kind of scheme that we can run. We have to find a way to get aggressive, put more people in the box, play some tighter man coverage, and then that's where the guys that you mentioned, obviously Brown is going to be challenged, Ambry Thomas is going to be challenged, Ward is going to be challenged. I think specifically more down the field because Ward is incredibly physical corner, a guy that can really stay with a lot of guys in the short and intermediate. But the one thing that he's always had trouble with, had it with us, and that occasion can be taken above, even moving over to San Francisco, is a little bit of deep speed if you can get guys deep. So it'll be interesting to see when those adjustments happen because I think Wilkes will eventually try to get a little bit more aggressive with it. Can our team, specifically the offense, take advantage down the field? Because I think this team on offense is going to have to create some explosives down the field to truly put up enough points as far as in the second half and sustain what I think they can do starting out with the run game and the short passing game as well. That's been working throughout the entirety of the season. But your point specifically here, for those concerns that you have, you still have Fred Warner, you still have Dre Greenlaw, great linebacker combination. You still have Bosa, who in his own right deserves a lot of recognition as an elite pass rusher. Like I said, Ward is a very good corner as well. There are going to be ways in which you guys are very ready to take advantage of any mistakes that we make. And that's the really key about us throughout this entire playoff run. We have to be able to take care of the ball first and foremost. And if we don't, then we're put ourselves behind the eight ball and really put ourselves in trouble as far as that's concerned. I'll say from our defensive side, I mentioned obviously the secondary pass rush being a huge thing. Over these last two games versus Buffalo and versus the Ravens, we have faced kind of superhuman quarterbacks from a leg standpoint, their ability to create second reaction plays, whether it's scrambling, and also give themselves advantage as far as the numbers game in the run game specifically. That makes it very difficult for defenses to account for what run schemes that you can run. Brock Purdy on the other side, I mean, he does not necessarily do it to that extent. He can scramble. I think he's actually created some plays with his legs more than people gave him credit for. But he's not necessarily the run threat that those guys are. As a result, when we have the opportunity to rush the passer, we have to take advantage of it and try and put pressure on him specifically. From my concern standpoint, the mismatches that Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle specifically present are going to be difficult to contend with, specifically on early downs, because those guys are walking explosive plays from that standpoint, whether it is in the run game because of how well Kittle can also block, but in the pass game with both of those guys being receiving threats. And so in these early downs in which you guys run two back sets, and that includes Kyle Juszczyk, who's an excellent fullback, a really versatile guy that can present different looks for you guys. When we match with base, can our linebackers hold up as far as passes are concerned? When you guys, whether it's play action, which you guys haven't run as much, but even the straight drop back game, creating those mismatches versus those linebackers and safeties to a certain extent, because unfortunately, Justin Reed has been gotten in coverage a little bit more than I would like to admit, unfortunately, throughout the entirety of the season. I am confident in our corners. You Trey McDuffie, all first and all pro for a reason. Excellent, whether it's inside or outside. L'Jarius Sneed also been excellent all year, especially against number one wide receivers. I think the matchup with him and Brandon Ayuk is going to be just fun to watch from a football enjoyment standpoint. And what Deebo Samuel could do really after the catch is going to be fascinating. Fortunately, our team has been pretty good at tackling. We've got a really physical secondary, really physical linebacker crew. So those are my really key concerns. Early down runs with Christian McCaffrey, specifically in between the tackles, because I think we're a little bit better guarding the edges than we are necessarily in between tackles with the way that we've used our linebackers creatively as far as odd fronts are concerned this playoffs. But there's still an aspect of Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, and George Kittle creating some explosive plays in early downs in the passing game. And then when eventually we get to that money down, can we generate enough pressure versus those mismatches up front from you guys' perspective to force Brock Purdy into some errant throws before he can find the open receiver, because you guys got a lot of talent. And, if we give you guys 4 seconds to throw the ball, he will eventually find somebody open.
Yeah, Kyle's good at scheming people open. You mentioned that, Wilkes will have to tighten up the defense. Yeah, I hope he does it quickly, because it seems like we're waiting until halftime, and that might be too late against the Chiefs. You mentioned running up the middle. I mean, some people have said the way to attack Chris Jones is just run right at him. And so, kind of like Aaron Donald, same thing. I imagine we might see some of that. We've done a pretty good job against Aaron Donald in the past. But I think Chris Jones is a better defensive tackle. I think for the last couple of years, I think he's been really the premier defensive tackle in the NFL, if you ask me. That's going to be some interesting matchups for sure. Kittle, he's definitely tough to cover, and like you said, he loves to block. CMC, obviously we know what he can do, both receiving and rushing. I think you hit on a lot of key points there. I think it's going to come down to, can we contain Pacheco without stacking the box? If we do stack the box, then I've been saying all along, I think MVS might be the X factor for this game, just because, he made the 2 huge catches against the Bills and the Ravens. And most of his career, most of the season, he was really more known for drops. So, which MVS stands up in the Super Bowl? Is it the one of the last 2 games, or the one that we have Niner fans known and loved? Actually, I shouldn't say that, because he did hit a big one against us, I think, in COVID year. But, bottom line is, most of the time that's not the case. Anyway, and then I have a question for you. As far as a couple guys coming off IR, and I want to know what you think about them being potential X factors in the game, with Sky Moore and Jet McKinnon coming off IR.
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as the IR guys are concerned, and I'll also lump Kadarius Toney into this. I mean, the reality situation is, I don't think any of those 3 are going to end up being featured in this game plan. I'd be surprised, honestly, if Sky Moore is active in general. I think that's kind of just a depth move. We had to activate him to make sure that his practice window was open, and we had to put Charles Omenihu on the IR regardless. So I wasn't surprised by that necessarily. Kadarius Toney, everything that's going on with him this year, I don't think that they're going to come back and try and feature him as a wide receiver. Possibly they try and use him for some jet sweeps, maybe some handoffs. That's possible. It kind of depends on how they feel about Mecole Hardman, which is kind of his own, specter of what happened as far as the Bills game is concerned, and what he can give to us as a wide receiver too. So I don't know if Kadarius Toney is really going to be featured on offense either. There's a possibility of him as a punt returner. Jerick McKinnon, I think, has the best chance to actually play. He can come in. He seemed like he was always kind of a part of the plan to come back around this time of the year. He was running around without a limp. Everybody said that he looked good at practice. If he's in the rotation, he can give a little bit different of a look, I should say, than CEH and Pacheco have given, which you guys know. I mean, Jim McKinnon has a little bit more juice to his game, good receiving back, really good pass blocker, as well as far as pass protection is concerned. And so having that element back into our passing game can be important. So it'll be fascinating to see how much they try to work him into that rotation as well. CH has been serviceable, I would say, but I wouldn't say necessarily something to where I'm against Jet McKinnon getting some snaps in this game as far as that's concerned. So from all 3 of those, I don't think Sky Moore is going to be active. Kadarius Toney, maybe a handoff or 2, maybe a jet sweep or 2, probably only special teams, if that. And Jet McKinnon has the best chance to kind of work himself into the running back rotation in the secondary role.
Yeah, Jet really hurt us in 2022. He had that one really big screen up the left, I remember.
Yeah, that was like on the 3rd and 22, I think it was, and we caught the edges running upfield, and that was a great
head.
Yeah, great design, and that's what you get. And I do think it's not been as featured as much. We've been using screens. It's a lot of been bubbles to wide receivers, a little bit of tight ends and such, and I think you'll see those still. But we haven't necessarily get into the running back screens a lot. I'll say this playoffs. I think that Andy Reid will have a few of those set up ready. for the Super Bowl. Yes, no nuggies for Kadarius Toney. Andy Reid is not going to be said too much up for Kadarius.
There you go. Yeah, and it's interesting to look at the differences between that 2022 game and this game. The Niners were not really full strength for that game, you could say. There were a lot of guys on the field that made it look like we were, but a lot of them were kind of walking wounded, playing hurt, where they probably wouldn't have played if it wasn't the Chiefs.
Yeah, McCaffrey just got over there. I think it was like on Wednesday of the game week.
Thursday. Yeah, he had 1.5
Thursday.
practices. So
yeah,
he didn't know most of the plays. We ran out of plays for him basically in the first half. So you didn't see much of him in the second half. And then, Bosa and Mooney Ward were both playing with pulled groins. Jimmy Ward was in his first game back of the entire season. I guess he came back briefly to break his hand against the Panthers, but it was like in the first, it was like during the kickoff, literally. And he like played a couple plays. He's like, I can't go. I got broken. So he had a club on his hand, and he was, not in game shape. And then Dre Greenlaw went out early in the second quarter and missed the entire second half. And I think there was more, but that was the big ones on defense. Oh, Eric Armstead was out completely. And then on offense, both our tackles, Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey, were both playing injured. And then the biggest one for me is, who is our QB? I mean, technically, Purdy threw his first interception.
I was going to say, we do have Brock Purdy's first interception in the NFL as well.
Technically, but it was in garbage time, and he hadn't been game planning. He was running practice squad or whatever at that point. So, bottom line is that's a huge difference, obviously. Last year, I was said a lot of stuff during the offseason about like, Jimmy G with CMC was almost as good as Purdy, and he was in 2022. The stats were similar. Jimmy went 4-0. It's just Purdy in 2023 is so much better than 2022. He's got the deep ball now. He's peeling off deep runs now. I've said a lot in the offseason, like, limited arm, limited height, limited top speed. A lot of stuff all day. You hear the haters saying, some people called me a hater. And I was like, I don't hate him. I really like him. I said what I hate is the hyperbole, calling him Montana, calling him Steve Young, calling him Brady, calling him Mahomes. But the better he plays is the less that's hyperbole. He's starting to play through a lot of that. And people say, well, Ted, what does he have to do to be Montana? I'm like, a bunch more comebacks. So Green Bay and Lions, there's a couple steps in the right direction, and some really clutch. About 4 rings.
I was about to say, can we start with one ring before we start with the
no, exactly. So so like you saw in the chat, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but Steve-O way up towards the top said, let's say it, he's him, Purdy is him, and here we go.
Yeah, but look, here's
acknowledge
the thing.
him. LOL.
We could definitely get into the Purdy conversation from this standpoint. I do think that Purdy is a solid to good quarterback in this league. I think what you've seen is that maturation that you talk about from 2022. When he kind of came in, he was just trying to, kind of fill in with Jimmy G and follow what the offense was given. And then he started to show a little bit more of that aggression, I think, down the stretch. And now coming into this year, I think you've seen a little bit more of that evolution where he's been more willing to create those plays outside the pocket, whether it is with his arm or his legs. And I think that's been very important. That's an element that Jimmy G never gave you guys. And down the field, his aggression is certainly noticeably better than Jimmy G. And I think he's been an upgrade, certainly from that standpoint. He's been able to make some of those big plays, and that opens up more avenues for your offense to be dangerous. And that's why overall, I do think you are a dangerous or more dangerous offense than you were with Jimmy G, no doubt about it, and certainly a better one than you were in 2019. The one thing I will say about Jimmy G is there is still that aspect of he's a really young quarterback. He is a little bit wet behind the ears, and he is prone to turnovers. He has those disaster artist type of moments in which if you get him under duress, he can get a little bit wonky with his accuracy. And the same way in which he does a very good job of throwing with timing in the offense and with anticipation, he sometimes can assume certain things as far as within that offense and what the defense is doing, and that can get him into trouble trying to throw it a little bit too early. and then not necessarily that window ever opening up and it just goes straight to a defender. So from that aspect, I think that he's nowhere near a game manager because that's not necessarily what his nature is. He's a little bit too high and a little bit too low to be considered a game manager. But overall, where he lands is a better quarterback than Jimmy G, undoubtedly. And I think that's why you guys are a better offense, without a doubt. So shout out to Brock Purdy, second year starting, coming in and playing as well as he has to get this team to the Super Bowl. That's no small feat at all. But I will certainly say, and I'll end it from this standpoint, from a talent, perspective, this is, I feel like this is a great defense. There's a great offense, a lot of talent on both sides of the ball as far as both teams are concerned, as far as your offense versus our defense. But what Steve Spagnuolo can present to a quarterback to mess with him pre and post snap, that's something that Brock Purdy, I don't think, is necessarily prepared for. And it's very difficult to prepare for that. And that's not just what you're going to see on the back end. That's also what you're going to get from a pressure package standpoint as well. So there are ways in which Kyle Shanahan will certainly help him out to make sure that he's not caught, without, for lack of a better term, but caught with his pants down a lot of times. But there are also going to be times in which Spags gets him. And if he does get him to the point where there's pressure on him and he gives you an errant throw, our defense has to take advantage of those moments and create turnovers where, the Packers and Lions couldn't necessarily take advantage of those.
There you go. I like it. Yeah, I mean, Spags is a great DC, and like you said, he knows how to disguise things really well, blitzes and packages and looks. And from the content creators I've spoken to, quite a few Chiefs, not just Kingdom Cast, but I think 4 or 5 others as well too. I've been really busy last couple of weeks, but they were saying things like Belichick, he'll take away what you do best and make you beat him a different way. So to me, that would be CMC, which could open things up for Purdy to throw deep if you're stacking the box. So daring him to do it. He definitely has shown he can this season. That was my big thing. It was like, I just want a QB who can throw deep to make teams play 2 high safeties. And I want him, he doesn't have to be Lamar or Josh Allen, but just run well enough to make people spy. And you saw the Lions spy him at the end of the NFC Championship game, so that one of the remaining sets of eyes in the box is not looking at your weapons. It's looking at your QB to see where he's going to run to. And so Purdy checks both of those boxes for me. So I'm happy with his maturation. I'm not going to call him. I'm not going to call him elite, but I think he's just outside of the elite sort of top 5. I think he's more in the 5 to 10 range of NFL QBs. And yeah, he's going to make it tough on you guys for sure, as good as Spagnuolo is. The Fawn says, our defense is not as good as the 2020 team. Our defense is not as good as the 2019 team, 2020 Super Bowl team. The 2019 defense was historic through 8 games, but then we had a lot of injuries in the second half of the season, including a lot of our Ronnie Blair, DJ Jones. There are some other good defensive tackles. I'm blanking on their names. Julian Taylor, I think, was another one. So, and then we had some secondary issues in the second half of the season. So our defense really dropped off at the end of 2019. And then we got a lot of guys healthy for the Super Bowl, to where like all the starters were there, but the D-line depth was not there. Like DJ Jones wasn't there. Like I said, those guys, Ronnie Blair, Julian Taylor, all missed. And so I don't know that the 2020 Super Bowl team, but defense was better than this one, because like Sherm was not a good corner, and like Mooney Ward and Lenore are nails. Like the only place I worry about for us at corner is Ambry Thomas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like
that's a lot. I worry a lot.
Same.
But and like I said, Jair Brown, I already listed my worries, so I won't hammer those out again. But like, Fred and Dre are much better now than they were then. So there's that. The D line, obviously, we missed DeForest Buckner. And we miss D Ford. I know you guys hate him because of the offside call and everything, but and we hate him because he was so injured here, and I think we're still paying him this year. I think we paid him $8.5 this year, and I don't think he's payed in a year and a half or 2 years. But that's just because we just kicked it out, so
cut him,
all in one season. But and we don't hate him, but we dislike him because of that. So maybe the D line was a little bit better, but I don't know that overall Tart and Ward were obviously a great safety duo, but I'll take Tashawn Gibson over Jaquiski Tart any day. Drop Tart. I mean, and Jair Brown's a weak link compared to like Jimmy Ward. But overall, I think this defense is actually more comparable than people think to that 2019, not the 2019 season defense, but the 2019 Super Bowl defense. Because you remember Richard Sherman just got cooked to death in that game.
No, Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill had a field day on Richard Sherman to say the
Damian
least.
Williams on the sideline a few times too. Yeah,
yes,
he was my MVP for the Chiefs. Damian Williams and Chris Jones were my MVPs. I was just like, nobody wants to hear him say. Now, all right, I'm sure you remember what they said when they said it. But when they said it, did they say we're going to Disney World or we're going to Disneyland?
I don't remember. I was enjoying some celebratory
some libations
at that point. Yeah.
Or other, whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Fair. I just we were arguing about it, and then people are like, well, Disney World's older than Disneyland. I'm like, hell it is. Disneyland's from 1955 and Disney World's 71. And then we were thinking maybe they dub it. So like on the West Coast, we heard Disneyland. On the East Coast, Disney World. I don't know. Maybe interesting to see. I need to look it up. Yeah. I need to look up the video. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, you probably could find it. But I'll say, as far as the comparison is concerned, I think that you certainly make some very good points about your secondary being improved. I absolutely think your corner room is better than it was for that 2020 or 2019 season, 2020 Super Bowl. I do feel like that defensive line has just lost a little bit of juice. DeForest Buckner is an all-pro defensive lineman for a reason. I mean,
but Bosa's better. Bosa's well, wait a sec. 2022 Bosa is better than 2019 Bosa, and even post ACL 2021 Bosa was better than 2019 Bosa. But I don't know that 2023 Bosa is because of the holdout. I mean, you can probably relate with Chris Jones,
right?
He just, I swear, the first time Bosa looked like Bosa to me was in the second half of the Lions game, where he had 2 sacks, put him out of field goal range, and he was making a huge impact. Hey, like, I remember that guy. And so I'm hoping that's what we get on Sunday, of course, But so that could be the X factor of where it's comparable kind of, and Hargrave too. If Hargrave can be like more like he was early, I'm hoping Hargrave Allegretti, because Hargrave likes to line up on the right. That's Nick Allegretti, the left guard. He obviously filled in well against the Ravens. But I just say
Madubuike did give him. I will say Madubuike did get him once or twice throughout that game, so that's certainly an X factor.
Madubuike is better than Javon Hargrave.
Hargrave, yes. I got to give a little bit of credit for him.
Yes,
but some of
he's better than Armstead, at least in this version. Maybe peak Armstead was similar, but Armstead hasn't been peak since he's been back from his injury. So,
that's the thing for me. I think the interior of that defensive line is really the biggest aspect, because I think that does kind of give you guys, or leave you guys, a little bit more susceptible to the inside run game, the run game in general, because of how, some of these interior offensive lines have been able to move you guys off the ball. And those guys, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, are better when they're kept clean, as every linebacker is. But
absolutely
right. And it's a little bit difficult when you have these guys climbing to the second level. And, Nick Allegretti is not Joe Tooney, but him, Creed, and Trey, they love climbing to the second level and cleaning up some linebackers that are, left vulnerable from that standpoint. So Pacheco is going to be used as a wrecking ball moving forward, and we're going to see if we can run the ball in general. But I think that, all things considered, our offense now is not as good as the 2019 offense. The only, biggest or absolutely change / improvement it is, I think that the ways in which Mahomes kind of manages the game, for lack of a better term, is better. He understands everything that is going on around him so much more advanced than he was back then. And so there are a lot of things that a defense can throw at him that just aren't going to affect him, because he anticipates them. And because now he's had so much time compared than it was back then, which was only his second full year starting. Now he has an incredible Rolodex of everything that defenses want to do from a coverage and blitz standpoint. It's difficult to trick him from that aspect. So that would probably be the only biggest advantage from that standpoint. I think we're a little bit better in the power run game, but I think that the offense and defense, as far as our offense versus your defense, is still going to be a very good matchup, and I think there are going to be interesting ways that their matchups were going to be end up falling out. But I do believe like there's going to be a point in time in this game, Steve Brooks is going to dial it up, and it's going to be, hey, we got MVS, we got Watson, and it's going to be probably on Ambry Thomas based on what a matchup ends up falling out, and it's going to be like, hey, who wins? Who wins that matchup? And if they don't, then they don't. We'll see.
I think it comes down to that some. I think also, the Chiefs are real proud of their interior offensive line, but the tackles, they leave a little something to be desired. Donovan Smith leading the league in holds in 2022, and Juwan Taylor leading the league in penalties, right, in 2023. Is that fair?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
That's what makes
look, yeah, no, he's had his struggles certainly, and a lot of it in the beginning part of the season was the false starting. Hasn't really been a thing in the second half of the season. He's whatever him adjustment or the referee adjustment, I don't know, whichever it is, hasn't been a thing in the second half of the season. Still a little bit with the holds, but that hasn't been a problem necessarily in the playoffs, which is good. Generally speaking, they've been pretty clean across the offensive line outside of Trey Smith, who had back-to-back holds last game, which unfortunately took a touchdown off the board as well. So, from a penalty standpoint, I think that we've been fairly disciplined, and that is a huge thing as far as what we've been able to do with limiting our mistakes in general. So that's the biggest thing. Our offense needs to stay on schedule. That's where the power run game is a massive part of making sure we stay ahead of the sticks, so we can get to the heavy personnel sets and still put you guys into conflict. Because we're not hey, we can get into 11 personnel and just drop back 50 times a game and really win the game type of offense that we were in 2019 and 2018.
No doubt. Yeah. While our defense may have dropped off a little, our offense is obviously way better than it was in 2019. Arguably the best in the NFL, other than maybe the Dolphins. And I just, Tua, come on. I don't know. As much as people cap on Purdy, I take him over Tua any day. So, and also it's just, they have Waddle, and they have Tyreek, and they have Mostert, but, then we have Kittle, and we have Juice, and we have Juwan Jennings, and there's just so many more ways we can hurt you than just a big three. Tyreek's insane, but while he'll run by you, Debo will run you over, and anyway, bottom line is we'll see what happens there. With Juwan Taylor, his grandmother passed away recently. Is that nothing burger? Is that something you think it'll hurt him? You think it'll help him, or is it just kind of like you never know? Depends on the person. Because I think different people take losses like that. Some people are like inspired by it. Some people just can't get over it. Like I know I talked to a Browns guy I work with on every Thursday on Faithful Dogs, and he said that Myles Garrett lost his uncle around Christmas time and wasn't the same the rest of this season. Even though he won DPOY, he said he wasn't the same towards the end of the season after that happened. So, do you have an opinion on that, or just wait and see?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you won't really know until it actually happens. The game happens, and we haven't heard anything about how he's handled it one way or the other, positive or negatively. He's gone about his work throughout the entirety of this week, and I think the biggest thing is the Chiefs have been here before, and not just versus you guys in 2019. We were here last year, and even Juwan Taylor, even not necessarily being a part of that team, though. The fact that Kansas City and Andy Reid and these guys, they know what the routine is about during a Super Bowl week. They know about all the pop and circumstance, everything. I think they'll be prepared to handle any distraction. I think they have been prepared throughout this week. And so from outside distraction standpoint, I don't think it's an issue. Him personally, how he handles that loss, you're never going to know until the lights turn on and he goes out there and plays.
There you go. Yeah, that's sort of what people I've talked to have said. You never know. Everybody takes it differently. I guess it depends on how close he was with his grandmother too, right? I mean, some people are very, very close with their grandma, where they really help raise them, and some people, it's just more of a distant relative that they see. If they're not local, you maybe don't see them that often. So I don't know. And I don't know enough about Juwan Taylor to know the answer to that one. As far as a prediction for the game, do you have a prediction for us, DMac?
Yeah. Look, I do believe that this is going to be a close game. Like I talked about, there's a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, a lot of really good coaching on both sides of the ball with 2 weeks to prepare. I think these guys are going to end up having very good game plans. I think that It might start a little slow as these two teams kind of feel each other out. A little traction, might be needed to be gained from both sides. I do ultimately think that the Chiefs end up winning the game. I have it about 27-23. The one thing I will say, it comes down to turnovers for me. If our defense can take advantage of a few of yours, then I think that we can certainly win the game. If our offense turns the ball over, then you guys can certainly swing it in your favor. So that's the biggest thing for me. I want to make sure that this team takes care of the football, and if they don't, then we're in trouble.
There you go. So do you have a score prediction?
Yeah, 27-23. You want me to answer SG's question real quick?
Sure. Which question was that? I didn't even see it.
Yeah, I think it's he asked with my top 5 Chiefs players of all time. I'll say really quickly.
Yeah.
So grew up. I'm a big fantasy football guy. So Jamal Charles was always one of my top fantasy picks every single year. So Jamal Charles is my number one. I loved all of my grandpa's old stories about Otis Taylor. So he is definitely in my top 5. You have to have Derek Thomas if you're a Chiefs fan. One of the best edge rushers of all time, point blank period. RIP to DT, man. Mahomes has to be in that list. He just has to be. I mean, he's Mahomes, so he's going to be there. And then kind of, it's a personal favorite of mine because he was close friends with my family as well. Mark McMillan, Mighty Mouse, as we affectionately called him in KC. So I have his jersey, game worn jersey, and so he is also in my personal top 5.
Nice, love it. That's not the sort of run of the mill you might get from a lot of people. So there's some good personalization on those 5, and then Derek Thomas up there with LT. Some of the best defenders of all time. One man wrecking crew, incredible. So, DMac, thanks for being on. I appreciate it. Everybody, make sure you check out DMac Wake. That's at DMac Wake 316 on Twitter and X. At Kingdom Cast on YouTube, and that's the cast has a K in it, so there's 2 Ks in Kingdom Cast. Great folks. He's our 3rd Kingdom Cast member to be on TED Talks Ball in the last 2 weeks. You guys have been helping me out a lot of great knowledge, insights. Learned a lot and had a lot of fun with all you folks. So thank you for being here. And I'll just say peace and go Niners. And you want to give us a Chiefs Kingdom or go Chiefs?
Peace out, Chiefs Kingdom, man. Good talking to you, man. Appreciate having me, Ted.
Absolutely.